The planet Lumeria was a world of wonder, unlike anything Earth had ever imagined. Its skies shimmered with streaks of violet and gold, and enormous floating cities drifted above the lush green landscapes below. Rivers of crystal-clear water reflected the light of 3 suns, making the world look like a painting come to life. The people of Lumeria were just as extraordinary. They were tall, graceful, and had the ability to communicate not only with words but also with thoughts. Telepathy was a natural part of life for them, and many could manipulate energy in dazzling ways. Queen Seraphine was the most powerful and respected ruler on Lumeria. Her long silver hair and violet eyes were known throughout the galaxy, and her intelligence and strength had kept her kingdom safe for decades. She was admired, even feared, by her people because of her ability to sense the emotions of others and harness energy with precision. Yet, despite her power, she often felt a strange emptiness, a feeling that something important was missing in her life. Humans were rare visitors to Lumeria. Most of the aliens considered them simple and unremarkable, unable to understand the advanced energies of Lumeria. That is why Queen Seraphine's decision to marry a human shocked everyone, even those closest to her. Ethan was that human. He was tall, with messy brown hair, kind eyes, and a calm, quiet nature. He had grown up on Earth, a planet far less advanced than Lumeria in terms of energy manipulation, but rich in creativity and human resilience. Unlike most visitors, he did not try to impress others with knowledge of alien technology or dazzling displays of skill. He simply observed, listened, and learned. That quiet demeanor drew Queen Seraphine's attention immediately. The first time she met him, it was during a diplomatic gathering in the Grand Palace of Lumeria. Ethan stood near the edge of the hall, watching the other delegates interact. Many of them moved in ways that showed off their powers, energy orbs swirling in their hands, thought projections floating above their heads, subtle glowing patterns running along their skin. Ethan, however, did nothing. He simply smiled politely when spoken to and responded thoughtfully, never raising his voice or trying to compete with the dazzling abilities around him. Queen Seraphine found it unusual. She had seen many beings in her lifetime, but none seemed so calm, so grounded, yet aware of everything happening around them. In a world where power and display often overshadowed wisdom, his quiet presence was a breath of fresh air. She studied him from a distance for several weeks, learning about his habits, his thoughts, and the way he handled himself in conversations. Her advisors noticed her interest and whispered among themselves. "Why would the queen pay attention to a human?" one asked. "He is nothing compared to the energy manipulators of Lumeria," another said. But Seraphine did not answer. She had already made her decision. She saw something in Ethan that no one else had, the kind of inner strength that did not need to shout to be felt. One day, she invited him to her private garden, a place hidden from the bustling palace, filled with flowers that glowed under Lumeria's suns and water that danced in midair. Ethan arrived. As always, quietly, he looked around in awe, noticing the subtle beauty in the energy streams flowing through the plants and stones. "Humans rarely notice these details," Seraphine said, her voice soft but filled with curiosity. "They are too busy looking at what glows and moves. But you," she paused, studying his face. "You see what matters." Ethan tilted his head. "I suppose I just pay attention," he replied calmly. "It is easy to miss things when you only look for what is loud or obvious." Seraphine smiled, feeling a strange warmth in her chest. She had grown used to people bowing, flattering her, or attempting to impress her with their abilities. Ethan did none of that. He simply was. And somehow, that simplicity felt powerful. Days turned into weeks, and the queen continued to spend time with Ethan. She asked him questions about Earth, about humans, and about how someone could be so quiet, yet so perceptive. Ethan answered honestly, without hesitation or fear. His calm demeanor seemed to put her at ease in a way that few others could. Then, one evening, Seraphine made a decision that would change both their lives forever. In the throne room, beneath the shimmering banners of Lumeria, she spoke clearly, without the usual ceremonious hesitation. "Ethan," she said, "I wish to marry you." The hall fell silent. Even the guards and advisors froze. Humans had been invited before, but marriage between a Lumerian queen and a human had never been imagined. The idea seemed almost impossible. Ethan blinked, processing her words. He had expected kindness, curiosity, or even friendship. But marriage? It was a thought that seemed surreal in this world of floating cities and energy streams. I am honored, he said slowly. But why me? Seraphine stepped closer. Her violet eyes held a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and something deeper, something she had never felt for anyone before. Because, she said softly, you are not afraid of me. You do not try to impress me with power. You are honest, calm, and human. And I see in you a strength that no one else possesses. The court erupted in whispers. Some muttered in disbelief, others in excitement. But Seraphine ignored them. She had made her choice. Ethan looked down, feeling the weight of the decision. He had never imagined leaving Earth, let alone marrying a queen of an alien civilization. And yet, something about Seraphine, the way she saw him, the way she trusted him, made the choice clear. I accept, he said quietly. I will marry you. The palace buzzed with preparation. Humans and Lumerians worked side by side to adapt customs, ceremonies, and traditions for a union that bridged two very different worlds. Ethan remained quiet through it all, observing and learning, never letting the excitement or stress of the moment disturb his calm nature. Queen Seraphine, for her part, found herself growing more fascinated with Ethan each day. She began to realize that his quiet nature was not a weakness, it was a different kind of strength. He did not rush to control situations with power or display. Instead, he listened, understood, and acted with careful thought. And in a world where power often led to arrogance, that was a rare and precious quality. As the wedding day approached, many doubted the union. How can a human keep up with a Lumerian queen? They whispered. He cannot even manipulate energy like we can. But Seraphine ignored them. She had already seen the truth. Ethan's strength was not measured in energy or flashy abilities. It was measured in patience, empathy, and insight, qualities that sometimes mattered more than any power. On the morning of the wedding, the palace was filled with color and light. Floating lanterns drifted through the halls, and the air shimmered with soft energy waves. Seraphine wore her ceremonial robes, adorned with precious crystals that resonated with her power. Ethan stood beside her, wearing simple yet elegant attire, calm as ever. When they exchanged vows, it was not a display of energy or power. It was a quiet, profound moment of trust and connection. The queen promised to honor and respect him, and Ethan promised to stand by her side, to observe, to learn, and to grow together. As they finished, the court looked on in awe. A human and the Queen of Lumeria married not because of power, but because of understanding, respect, and quiet strength. It was a sight that none would forget. After the ceremony, Seraphine led Ethan to a balcony overlooking the floating gardens. The suns were setting, casting a warm golden glow across the world. She looked at him and smiled. You are different, she said softly. I did not know humans could possess such calm strength. Ethan smiled back. I am not strong in the ways you are used to, he said. But I try to understand, to observe, and to do what is right. That is the strength I have. Seraphine nodded, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. Then I am lucky, she said, taking his hand. Because the greatest strength is sometimes hidden in the quietest places, and so, the human and the queen began their life together. In the palace of Lumeria, among beings of dazzling energy and incredible power, it was the quiet man from Earth who would soon change everything. Little did anyone know, Ethan's calm nature was not the limit of his abilities. Deep inside him, a hidden potential waited, one that could astonish the galaxy and prove that humans were far more extraordinary than anyone had imagined. But that awakening, and the shock it would bring to Queen Seraphine, was still far in the future. For now, the silent husband simply stood beside the queen, watching the sun set over Lumeria, calm, patient, and quietly extraordinary. Life in the palace was unlike anything Ethan had ever imagined. Every day brought something new and strange, yet fascinating. The halls were vast, with ceilings that seemed to touch the sky. Floors glowed softly underfoot, responding to the energy of those who walked upon them. Water flowed in midair through shimmering channels, and the scent of exotic flowers filled the air. Lumerians moved gracefully, their energy a constant, visible presence. Ethan found himself fascinated by everything. The way a Lumerian could communicate with thoughts alone, the way their energy streams could weave patterns in the air, even the way their skin shimmered when they felt strong emotions. It was all new to him. And yet, he did not try to copy them or show off. He simply watched, listened, and learned. Queen Scifi noticed his quiet curiosity and often spent long hours with him. She would explain things to him about Lumeria, the history, the politics, the science behind their energy manipulation. Most of the time, Ethan would ask simple questions, but the questions were insightful, showing that he thought deeply about what she said. "Why do Lumerians use so much energy in daily life?" he asked one morning as they walked through the garden. "Why not just keep it simple?" Seraphine smiled at the question. Many in her court would have been offended or confused, but Ethan's tone was calm, genuine, and full of curiosity. "Energy is part of who we are," she explained. "It helps us communicate, create, and protect. But sometimes I wonder if we use it too much. Perhaps simplicity is a kind of power too." Ethan nodded. "I think there is strength in quiet observation too. Even if it is invisible to most, it can guide decisions better than flashy displays of power." Seraphine paused, considering his words. It was rare for anyone, even other Lumerians, to speak with such clarity and humility. She realized more and more that Ethan's quiet nature was not weakness, it was something precious. The palace was not without its challenges. Lumerians expected mastery of energy, and humans had no natural ability in this field. Ethan was often asked to attend lessons with other diplomats and scholars. He struggled at first, not understanding how to move or manipulate energy as they did. Yet, he did not give up. He observed carefully, mimicked movements, and thought logically about the patterns. His calm patience amazed the teachers. One day, while trying to channel a small energy stream, Ethan accidentally did something unexpected. The energy responded to him, not in the flashy way Lumerians did, but it seemed to resonate with his presence. The instructors gasped, unsure of what had happened. Ethan himself did not notice at first. Queen Seraphine, however, did. She had been observing quietly from a distance. "There is something unusual about him," she whispered to herself. "He may not use energy like we do, but there is something in him that we cannot understand yet." The palace staff also began to notice small things. Plants near Ethan seemed to grow a little faster when he was around. Small energy currents, normally invisible, flickered in unusual ways when he touched them. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but those who were sensitive to energy could feel it. Despite these strange occurrences, Ethan remained humble. He never tried to show off or gain attention. His quiet presence had a calming effect on the palace, even on the most ambitious and energetic Lumerians. Conflicts that might have escalated into arguments were often diffused simply because Ethan would calmly observe and ask a simple question, helping others think more clearly. "Why are you so calm all the time?" one young Lumerian asked him curiously one afternoon. Her skin shimmered faintly as she spoke, her energy pulsing with curiosity. Ethan smiled gently. "I do not think being loud or fast makes you strong. I try to understand first, then act. It is easier to make good decisions when your mind is calm." The young Lumerian frowned thoughtfully. "I never thought of it that way." Even Queen Seraphine found herself learning from him. She was used to relying on her own strength and energy, but Ethan showed her a different kind of wisdom. She began to realize that power was not only measured by energy or speed, but also by patience, observation, and understanding. Ethan also began to notice more about the Lumerian people. Many of them, despite their abilities, often felt pressure to perform and be impressive. They worried about showing weakness or failure. Humans, he thought, were different. On Earth, failure was seen as part of learning. Mistakes were not always shameful, they were opportunities to grow. He wondered if Lumeria's obsession with energy and display sometimes hid the true potential of its people. One evening, Ethan and Seraphine walked through the palace balcony. The three suns were setting, casting long golden and violet shadows across the floating gardens. "Do you think humans can ever be like Lumerians?" she asked quietly. Ethan considered this carefully. "I think humans are different, not less. We may not manipulate energy the way you do, but we adapt, observe, and find ways to overcome challenges. That is our strength." Seraphine looked at him, seeing not just a human, but a partner, a mind as capable as any she had ever known. "Then perhaps Lumerians have much to learn from humans," she said softly. As time passed, subtle changes began to occur. Some of the palace plants grew brighter around Ethan. Small energy currents seemed to respond to his presence, as if recognizing something in him. No one could explain it, but Seraphine quietly observed with growing curiosity. Ethan also began forming friendships. The young scholars and diplomats, initially skeptical of a human in their midst, began to see the value of his quiet mind. They realized that Ethan could solve problems that others struggled with, not because he had flashy powers, but because he noticed details no one else did and stayed calm under pressure. One notable moment came during a meeting of the Palace Council. A disagreement had broken out over how to allocate energy resources for a new project. The council members, all Lumerians, raised their voices, projecting energy currents to emphasize their points. Ethan listened quietly, analyzing each argument. Then he spoke, softly but clearly. "If we distribute energy this way, it may be efficient in the short term, but some areas will be underpowered, causing problems later. Instead, if we adjust the flow slightly and monitor usage, we can achieve balance without waste." The room fell silent. Everyone had expected loud debate, energetic demonstrations, or even telepathic persuasion, but Ethan's calm reasoning, plain words, and careful observation made the solution obvious. The council members exchanged glances, then nodded in agreement. Seraphine, observing from the side, could not hide her admiration. This quiet human, without flashy power or energy manipulation, had just solved a problem that many highly skilled Lumerians had struggled with for hours. "Perhaps this is why I married him," she thought to herself with a small smile. "It is not his energy or his skill that matters. It is his mind, his patience, and his calm understanding." Yet, despite these small signs of potential, Ethan himself remained unaware of his latent abilities. He did not understand that the subtle changes around him, the flicker of energy, the way plants seemed to respond, were indications of something extraordinary awakening inside him. For now, he was simply a human trying to understand an alien world, learning from it, and slowly gaining the respect of those around him. But Seraphine knew, deep in her heart, that his calm nature and quiet observation were only the beginning. Something much greater lay within him, something that would one day astonish the entire palace and even her. In the evenings, Seraphine often watched him in silence. While others marveled at energy displays or manipulation, she found herself marveling at the quiet strength in his eyes. It was a strength that did not shout, did not seek attention, but was steady and unwavering, and she knew, without fully understanding how or why, that this quiet human would change everything in the palace one day. The palace of Lumeria had never been quieter. A rare stillness hung over the floating city, a calm that only came before great events. Ethan moved through the halls with his usual quiet grace, observing the subtle flow of energy that seemed to hum through the very walls. The palace had become his home, and he was learning its rhythms. Yet, he could not have known that this calm was about to break. It started in the afternoon, during a ceremony that celebrated the energy harvest of the floating gardens. The palace was filled with Lumerians, scholars, and diplomats from neighboring worlds. Energy streams danced above the crowds, reflecting in every surface, creating a dazzling display. Queen Seraphine stood at the center, radiant as ever, her eyes glowing faintly as she guided the ceremonial currents with effortless skill. Suddenly, a warning alarm echoed through the palace. Energy readings spiked violently, and a strange vibration ran through the walls. Something in the energy network had gone wrong, a cascading overload that could destroy parts of the palace if not contained. The guests gasped and backed away as Lumerians focused on controlling the surge. Waves of energy flashed through the halls, some lancing toward the floating gardens. The crowd panicked. Many telepaths tried to calm each other, while energy manipulators struggled to stabilize the currents. Even Queen Seraphine, despite her immense power, found herself stretched thin as she tried to manage multiple crises at once. Ethan stood to the side, quietly analyzing the situation. His heart beat calmly, and he observed patterns in the chaos that no one else seemed to notice. The energy pulses were not random, they followed a rhythm, almost like a song, and he felt, somehow, that he could understand it. A young Lumerian rushed past him, almost colliding with Ethan. "We cannot control it," she cried. "The energy is too strong. The palace might collapse." Ethan stepped forward instinctively. He had never tried to manipulate energy before, not in the way the Lumerians did. Yet, in that moment, something inside him responded. The surge of power that threatened the palace seemed to recognize him, resonating with a hidden part of his own energy. Without fully understanding how, Ethan extended his hands. A warm, calm light began to gather around him, soft and steady. It was not the flashy, swirling energy of the Lumerians, but something different, something pure, focused, and strong in a quiet way. Queen Seraphine saw it immediately. Her violet eyes widened in disbelief as she watched the human she had married step into the center of the chaotic energy. The palace currents bent toward him, as if recognizing a force they had not encountered before. "Ethan," she whispered, fear and awe mingling in her voice. "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Ethan did not speak. He did not need to. He felt the rhythm of the energy, the surging pulses, and he moved with them, gently guiding the currents with his presence alone. Slowly, the waves of dangerous energy began to stabilize. Streams that had been lashing toward the floating gardens softened, then stopped entirely. The court watched in stunned silence. The Lumerians, who prided themselves on mastery of energy, could not believe what they were seeing. A human, quiet, unassuming, was controlling a crisis they themselves had struggled to manage. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours, before the final surge of energy subsided. The palace was safe. The floating gardens remained intact, shimmering under the three suns, unharmed. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Ethan barely noticed. He was still focused, calming the last flickers of unstable energy, until finally, everything returned to normal. Queen Seraphine stepped forward, her eyes shining. "Ethan, you did it. How?" Ethan looked down, surprised at what had just happened. He had acted instinctively, following the rhythm he had sensed. I do not know," he admitted softly. "I just felt it. It felt wrong, and I tried to fix it." Seraphine studied him closely. Her mind raced with questions. Humans were supposed to be ordinary, incapable of energy manipulation. And yet, here was Ethan, not only controlling the surge but doing so with a skill and precision that rivaled the most advanced Lumerians. Whispers spread quickly through the palace. "Did you see that?" one diplomat exclaimed. "A human controlled the energy. She is married to him?" Another asked in disbelief. Even the Lumerian scholars were stunned. They had studied energy for centuries, yet no one had ever witnessed this. Ethan's quiet presence, his calm observation, had awakened something that had lain dormant, something no one had thought humans could possess. Seraphine approached him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, you must understand," she said softly. "What you just did, it is extraordinary. You are not just a human, you have a gift, one that even I cannot fully explain. Ethan shook his head. I did not mean to do anything extraordinary. I just wanted to help. That is exactly what makes it extraordinary, Seraphine said, smiling. Power without arrogance. Strength without pride. It is rare. Over the next few days, the palace buzzed with curiosity. Scholars and energy experts observed Ethan, trying to understand the source of his abilities. He remained humble, never flaunting what he could do. Simply practicing small, controlled interactions with energy under careful supervision. Each time, the energy responded to him naturally, almost as if it recognized his calm, steady mind as a guiding force. Ethan began to understand a few things about his own nature. Humans, he realized, were different from Lumerians not because they lacked ability, but because their energy was linked to thought and emotion in a unique way. He could sense patterns, feel the flow of energy, and influence it through focus and intention rather than force. Queen Seraphine took every opportunity to study him. She guided him gently, teaching him techniques to refine his ability. With each session, Ethan grew more confident. Though he remained as humble as ever, she marveled at how his quiet demeanor masked such immense potential. One evening, she found him in the floating garden, sitting cross-legged and observing the energy currents flowing through the plants and air. You are learning quickly, she said softly. Ethan looked up. I am only learning what I can feel. The energy responds to calmness. I cannot control it like you do, it responds to intention, not force. Seraphine smiled. That is a rare kind of strength. You may not realize it yet. A few days later, a minor crisis tested Ethan's abilities again. A small energy node in the palace core became unstable, threatening to disrupt the flow of power to an entire district. Lumerian experts rushed to intervene, but Ethan approached calmly. He placed his hands near the node, closed his eyes, and focused. Slowly, the node stabilized. No explosions, no flashing energy, no drama, just a quiet restoration. Those who witnessed it were amazed. Even the youngest apprentices began to whisper about the human who commands energy with quiet strength. Word reached neighboring planets. Humans, once considered ordinary and weak, were suddenly seen as beings with hidden potential. Diplomats began to reconsider their views, and some even came to study Ethan, hoping to learn the secret of his calm, extraordinary power. Queen Seraphine, however, remained focused on the man she had married. She realized that his strength was not in flashy displays or immediate power. It was in patience, observation, and empathy. He had the ability to see patterns others could not, to act without fear, and to guide energy in ways no one had imagined. And deep inside Ethan, something stirred. He did not yet fully understand what had awakened, only that he felt different, more connected, more aware, and more capable than ever before. His quiet strength had become a force that even the most powerful beings of Lumeria could not ignore. As the sun set over the floating city, Seraphine watched him from the balcony, her heart full of wonder. This human, she whispered, is more than I ever imagined. He will change everything. And indeed, he would. The silent husband, the quiet observer from Earth, had awakened a power that would soon astonish the galaxy. But for now, he simply stood beside the queen, calm, focused, and quietly extraordinary, ready for whatever challenges the future might bring. The palace of Lumeria had returned to its usual rhythm, but things were subtly changing. Whispers about the human, Ethan, were no longer just gossip. They were conversations filled with wonder and speculation. Scholars, diplomats, and even ordinary citizens could not stop talking about the man who had calmed the palace's energy surge with nothing but focus and quiet determination. Queen Seraphine watched these developments with pride, but also with caution. She knew that Ethan's abilities were still mysterious, even to him. While he had stabilized dangerous energy flows instinctively, no one truly understood how his human nature allowed him to interact with energy so differently from the Lumerians. Ethan himself remained humble. He practiced daily, observing the energy around him, learning its patterns, and understanding its rhythm. Unlike Lumerians, he did not manipulate energy with flashy gestures or force. Instead, he guided it with patience and intention, as if coaxing a living thing to follow him. The palace began to notice the subtle effects. Plants grew faster near him. Small streams of energy flowed more smoothly. And even the moods of those around him seemed calmer. One morning, Seraphine approached Ethan in the floating gardens, a place where the sun's light danced through the air in ribbons of color. "Ethan," she said softly, "do you realize what you are?" Ethan tilted his head. "I am a human," he replied with a small smile. "I do not understand why the energy responds to me the way it does. I only know that I feel it, and it feels natural to help guide it." Seraphine took his hands in hers. "That is exactly it. Humans are different. Your mind and your nature allow you to interact with energy in ways Lumerians cannot. You do not force it. You harmonize with it. That is a rare gift." Ethan looked thoughtful. "So, humans have this potential all along?" "Perhaps," Seraphine said. "But it has been hidden. Most humans do not have the chance to awaken it. You are special. Ethan, your calm, your patience, your understanding. These are strengths that no amount of flashy energy can replace." Over the following weeks, Ethan's abilities continued to grow. He learned to focus his mind to guide larger flows of energy, subtly influencing currents that powered entire districts of the palace. He could feel the rhythm of the world around him, sensing where energy was weak, where it was strong, and how it could be balanced. The palace scholars studied him closely, fascinated by his unique connection to energy. Unlike Lumerians, who had to train for decades to control energy with skill, Ethan seemed to interact with it naturally. He was like a mirror, reflecting the energy around him and helping it find balance. One day, a group of young apprentices approached him. They had been skeptical at first, but curiosity overcame their doubt. "Ethan," one of them asked, her hands glowing faintly with small energy patterns, "how do you control energy without trying to force it?" Ethan smiled gently. "I do not control it like a tool. I listen to it. I feel it, and I guide it where it needs to go. It is not about power. It is about understanding." The apprentices exchanged amazed glances. "So, humans can really do this?" one whispered. "Yes," Ethan said softly. "But only if you are patient, calm, and willing to understand." Word of Ethan's abilities reached the broader galaxy. Other planets, once skeptical of humans, began to reconsider. They sent envoys and scholars to observe him, hoping to learn the secret of his quiet, yet powerful energy. Humans were no longer seen as ordinary. They were seen as beings with hidden potential, capable of feats no one had imagined. Back in the palace, Ethan and Seraphine spent long hours together, refining his abilities. She taught him techniques to focus his energy more precisely, to harmonize with larger currents, and to sense disturbances before they became problems. Each lesson revealed new possibilities. Ethan began to understand something profound. Humans, he realized, were adaptable in a way that Lumerians were not. Their minds could resonate with multiple types of energy. Their intuition allowed them to solve problems creatively, and their patience and empathy gave them a perspective that others lacked. Where Lumerians relied on raw skill and practice, humans could combine observation, reasoning, and emotion to guide energy in unexpected ways. As Ethan's powers grew, so did his confidence. Though he remained as humble as ever, he never sought recognition or praise. Instead, he focused on helping others, stabilizing energy flows, and understanding the world around him. His quiet nature became a source of calm in the palace, and even the most restless Lumerians found themselves inspired by his patience and wisdom. One evening, Seraphine took Ethan to the palace observatory. From there, they could see the entire floating city, the rivers of energy flowing like ribbons through the air, connecting districts, gardens, and towers. "Do you see this?" she asked, her hand sweeping over the cityscape. "This energy is our lifeblood. And yet, even with all our skill, It is fragile. But you can sense it, guide it, and balance it. You are more than I ever imagined. Ethan looked out at the city, feeling the pulse of energy beneath his feet. It is beautiful, he said softly, and powerful. I never realized how connected everything is. The energy, the people, even the plants. It all affects each other. Seraphine smiled. Exactly. That is why you are so extraordinary. You see the connections others miss. You act with understanding, not just strength. That is a kind of power that no one can match. As they spoke, a small group of Lumerian leaders entered the observatory. They had been observing Ethan for weeks and had come to witness his abilities firsthand. You are remarkable, human, one elder said, bowing respectfully. Your understanding of energy surpasses anything we have studied. How? How do you do it? Ethan shook his head. I do not know how to explain it. I feel it, and I try to guide it. That is all. I reeling the by. The elder nodded slowly. Perhaps humans have been underestimated for too long. You may be the bridge between our worlds. Your quiet strength may teach us more than we ever expected. Seraphine looked at Ethan, pride shining in her eyes. Yes, and together, we will explore what humans can truly do. In the following weeks, Ethan's presence began to influence palace life in other ways. Lumerians who had once been impatient or quick to anger found themselves thinking more clearly in his presence. Disputes were resolved more peacefully. Small problems that had lingered for months were solved with ease. Even the palace gardens flourished like never before, responding subtly to the energy of those who walked among them. Ethan's quiet guidance and understanding became a symbol of hope. The people of Lumeria began to see humans not as ordinary beings, but as partners beings, with unique strengths, capable of growth, understanding, and harmony. One day, Seraphine approached Ethan as he studied energy patterns in the central hall. Do you realize what you have done? She asked. Ethan looked up, puzzled. I am not sure. You have changed the way Lumeria sees humans, she said. You have shown that strength is not only in skill or energy manipulation, but in patience, understanding, and empathy. You have awakened potential that no one knew existed. Ethan felt a warm sense of pride, though he remained humble. I only wanted to help, he said softly. I did not know it would have such an effect. Seraphine smiled, taking his hand. That is the nature of true power, Ethan. It does not need to announce itself. It acts quietly, yet changes everything. As the sun set over Lumeria, casting ribbons of gold and violet across the floating city, Ethan and Seraphine stood together, looking out at the world. He had begun to understand the scope of his abilities, and she had begun to understand the true potential of humans. And somewhere deep inside, Ethan felt the stirring of something even greater, an awakening that would soon reveal just how extraordinary humans could be. The calm, quiet strength he had always possessed was only the beginning. Lumeria was on the brink of a new era, and at its heart was a human who had quietly, patiently, and thoughtfully shown the galaxy that strength came in many forms, sometimes in the quietest and most unassuming ways. The palace of Lumeria buzzed with excitement and curiosity. Word of Ethan's abilities had spread across the galaxy, reaching planets and civilizations that had once doubted humans. Scholars and diplomats traveled from distant worlds to witness the human who could harmonize energy in ways no Lumerian had ever seen. But for Ethan, life remained quiet and focused. He did not seek fame or recognition. He simply practiced, learned, and helped wherever he could. Queen Seraphine watched him with pride. She had seen the beginnings of his abilities, the subtle guidance of energy, and the quiet wisdom he carried. Now, she could see the full potential stirring within him. Each day, his connection with the energy of Lumeria grew stronger, and each day, he became more confident in his calm, patient way. One morning, the palace faced a test unlike any before. A massive energy storm approached the floating city, triggered by fluctuations in the planetary core. The storm was unpredictable, its waves surging with power that could destroy districts, topple towers, and disrupt the flow of energy that sustained Lumeria. The Lumerians panicked. Energy manipulators gathered in the palace halls, attempting to contain the storm, while telepaths tried to warn citizens and redirect flows. Despite their skill, they struggled to manage the sheer force of the storm. Ethan stood beside Seraphine in the observation chamber. He could feel the storm's rhythm, the pulse of energy, the chaos, and the patterns hidden within it. Unlike others, he did not feel fear. Instead, he felt understanding. "This is bigger than anything before," one elder whispered nervously. "Can a human really handle it?" Seraphine's eyes met Ethan's. "I believe he can. He is ready." Ethan took a deep breath. Closing his eyes, he focused on the energy of the storm. It was overwhelming, chaotic, and powerful, but he did not try to control it forcefully. Instead, he listened, guided it gently, and harmonized with it. Waves of energy began to respond, bending toward him, slowing their furious motion, and forming patterns he could follow. The palace watched in astonishment. The storm, which had seemed unstoppable, began to calm under the touch of the human. His quiet, steady presence acted like a stabilizing force. Lightning arcs softened, currents slowed, and the terrifying roar of energy transformed into a flowing rhythm, guided by Ethan's mind. Queen Seraphine could hardly believe her eyes. The man she had married, the quiet human from Earth, was now standing at the center of one of the greatest challenges Lumeria had ever faced, and he was succeeding without force, without flash, only with calm understanding. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Ethan's hands moved slightly. Not in gestures, but in subtle guidance, like a conductor leading an orchestra. The energy responded, shaped, and balanced itself. Finally, the storm dissipated entirely, leaving the palace and city unharmed. A wave of astonished silence filled the halls. Then, slowly, cheers erupted. Lumerians, scholars, and diplomats alike bowed to Ethan, not only in respect, but in awe. Humans, once seen as ordinary, had now proven themselves capable of feats no one had imagined. Seraphine stepped forward, her violet eyes shining. She placed her hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You have done what no one else could," she said softly. "You have shown the galaxy the true potential of humans. You are extraordinary." Ethan looked around at the crowd, still calm. I only did what felt right," he said quietly. "The energy, it listened to me, and I guided it. That is all, but that is everything," Seraphine said, smiling. "It is more than anything we expected. Your quiet strength, your patience, your understanding, it has changed everything." News of Ethan's actions spread quickly across the galaxy. Humans were no longer seen as weak or ordinary. They were respected for their hidden potential, adaptability, and unique perspective. Scholars from other planets began to study humans more closely, hoping to understand the nature of their abilities. Diplomats approached Earth with newfound respect, realizing that humans could play a vital role in galactic affairs. In the palace, life began to change as well. Lumerians who had once relied solely on raw energy began to study Ethan's methods. They learned that patience, observation, and understanding could guide energy as effectively as skillful manipulation. Conflicts within the palace were resolved more peacefully. Projects that had seemed impossible were completed with balance and harmony. Ethan continued his quiet, steady life, never seeking praise. He worked with Seraphine, refining his abilities and helping others understand the deeper nature of energy. Together, they explored new ways to harmonize energy across the planet, creating a more stable and prosperous Lumeria. One evening, Seraphine and Ethan stood together in the floating gardens, watching the three suns set. The light reflected off the rivers of energy flowing through the city, making it shimmer like a living jewel. "You have done more than I could have imagined," Seraphine said softly. Ethan smiled gently. "I did not do it alone. I only followed what I felt was right." The energy, The people. They all played a part. I only guided. Seraphine took his hand. That is the mark of true strength. It is quiet, humble, and yet it changes everything. You have shown that humans are capable of greatness, beyond what anyone imagined. As the days passed, Lumeria entered a new era. Humans and Lumerians began to work together in ways never seen before. Humans brought creativity, patience, and adaptability, while Lumerians shared their knowledge, energy skills, and wisdom. Together, they built cities that were more efficient, gardens that flourished, and systems that balanced energy and life across the planet. Ethan and Seraphine became symbols of unity and cooperation. Their marriage was no longer just a union of two beings, it was a bridge between worlds, a testament to understanding, trust, and partnership. One day, a group of young humans arrived on Lumeria, eager to learn from Ethan. They had heard the stories of the quiet human who could harmonize energy, and they wanted to understand their own potential. Ethan welcomed them, teaching them with patience and care, showing them that true strength came not from display or power, but from understanding and quiet determination. Seraphine watched him from a distance, feeling proud and inspired. He is teaching them more than energy, she thought. He is teaching them patience, observation, and respect for life itself. That is a gift no one can measure. Over time, the alliance between humans and Lumerians grew stronger. Trade, knowledge, and culture flowed freely between the two worlds. Humans began to take their place as respected members of the galactic community, and the lessons of quiet strength, patience, and understanding spread across civilizations. Ethan, however, remained the same humble, quiet man he had always been. He never sought recognition, never demanded attention, but his presence was felt everywhere. People learned from his example, inspired by the calm power that could harmonize chaos and turn challenges into opportunities. As the three suns set once again over Lumeria, casting golden and violet ribbons of light across the city, Seraphine stood beside Ethan on the palace balcony. "You have changed everything," she said softly. Ethan looked out over the city, feeling the pulse of energy beneath his feet. "I only did what I could," he replied. "The rest came from understanding, patience, and learning from everyone around me." Seraphine smiled, taking his hand in hers. "And that is why you are extraordinary. You have shown the galaxy that strength is not only in skill or energy, but in calm, quiet understanding. You have awakened the true potential of humans, and the world will never be the same." Together, they watched the suns sink below the horizon, knowing that the future held endless possibilities. Lumeria was safe, humans were respected, and the galaxy had witnessed the quiet, extraordinary power of a man who had once seemed ordinary. And in that calm moment, Ethan understood something profound. True strength does not need to shout. It does not need to display itself in force or brilliance. Sometimes, the greatest power lies in quiet observation, in patience, in empathy, and in the courage to act with understanding. The silent human, once underestimated, had awakened not only his own potential, but the potential of his species. And with Queen Seraphine by his side, he would continue to guide, inspire, and protect, leading Lumeria and the galaxy into a new era of harmony, understanding, and endless possibilities.